Good afternoon. My name is Dillon. I'm a reporter with the Los Angeles Times, and I'm one half of this extremely dynamic, as you will soon see, duo which does a bi-weekly housing podcast called Gimme Shelter, which also is a great Rolling Stones song, by the way. And we talk about California housing issues, from things that the governor's doing to things that are happening on the streets.
This is always the most depressing part of our public events, but quick show of hands. Anybody who listens to the podcast, hands up.
All right.
Hey,
yeah, we'll take
not
it.
bad. We'll take it.
Thank you, Governor.
Yes,
Appreciate
thank you,
it.
Governor Schwarzenegger. The endorsement. So we typically choose a housing-related topic every 2 weeks that we discuss in arguably infuriating detail. The topic that we are going to kind of go over today is why it's so difficult to build housing in California, and specifically what Gavin Newsom, who's kind of conspicuously absent, I would say, or
From today,
sure. Has done and not done to make it easier. And maybe we can start out with some of the ambitious promises Newsom proposed while on the campaign trail.
Right. So I think in contrast to the previous governor, Jerry Brown, Gavin Newsom has kind of made housing a centerpiece of what his platform was when he was campaigning and in his first year or so in office. A couple of the big ticket items that he promised was supporting the building of 3.5 million new homes statewide over the next 7 years, so between now and 2025. Just for some context, right now in the state, we build about 100,000 units a year. So this would be roughly 5 times the amount of housing that's built over a 7-year period. So
it's a lot.
Extremely ambitious. Second, he called for a Marshall Plan on housing, which sort of evokes World War II era resources that the state and others would provide to address housing issues. And then third, he talked a lot about kind of changing the financial calculus that cities have when they support housing. One issue as to why cities may find it difficult to support the building of new housing is they get a lot more revenue from office construction and from hotels than they do for new housing, kind of adding to some of the sort of local control and NIMBY issues that we had brought up earlier in the day.
And just to flesh that out, I'm going to use the example I always use and probably use too much.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm a city and there's a vacant piece of land next to me and I'm choosing between, let's say, an affordable housing project or a Target, if I go with the Target, that means more money coming into my coffers, and then I don't have to provide schools, parks, and other services for that affordable housing complex. That remains a problem that has yet to be solved.
Right.
So we're going to do a little good cop, bad cop here. Liam loves being bad cop, so I will be good cop on what Newsom kind of has and has not achieved so far. Probably the biggest feather in his cap on housing and homelessness in terms of things he promised to do and actually did get done legislatively was the anti-rent gouging cap that is now in effect. So some people call this rent control. It's a little more generous than local rent control regimes that many of you are used to. It caps annual rent increases for the vast majority of apartment units in California at 5% plus inflation.
And not only that, it prevents folks from being evicted without a specific cause. So these sort of two policies work together, and that was part of the bill.
Exactly. It's interesting, too, that policy hasn't been kind of explicitly framed in a homelessness context, at least when it was originally rolled out. But you do see it when Newsom gets up there and says, this is what we're doing about homelessness. This is part of the plan. He also has unleashed pretty much an unprecedented amount of homelessness money. Last year was over $2 billion combined housing and homelessness. This year there's a proposal for $1.4 billion. Governor Jerry Brown got a ton of acclaim from local elected officials when he approved an emergency homelessness funding amount of $650 million. So that gives you an idea of the scale that Newsom is operating on. A couple other things that Newsom has pushed for in his first year in office and has achieved: the number of units that Southern California governments are required to plan for has shot up significantly. I think probably much to the alarm of perhaps some people in this room. So it used to be Southern California governments only had to plan for about 440,000 units of housing over an 8-year period. That number is now tripled, 1.3 million. Mm-hmm. That includes market rate housing, but also low income housing as well. You want to go bad cop?
Sure, I'll do it.
Pretend to be reluctant.
Right. So we talked about the promises, right? And my kind of consistent argument in evaluating the governor is that what he has proposed so far has not really lived up to the amount of promises that he's had. So, for instance, we have not seen a major housing production strategy that he has supported along the lines of the housing production that he's calling for. Similarly, while I don't want to take away from the significant increase in funding, the amount of funding he has, provided is not kind of ongoing funding. It's funding that needs to be renewed every single year. And so, given the amount of shortage that there is in low-income housing in particular, the amount of funding is not necessarily commensurate with what the need is.
And that's something you hear consistently from services providers and homelessness advocates is, yes, we love the new amount of money, but we need that every year.
Yeah. I think that's kind of the two big things. Let's keep moving.
We're trying to get you guys out so you can grab a sandwich at some point. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what he doesn't really control in terms of California's housing crisis.
Yeah, so, he inherited a situation that was obviously, as everyone in this room knows, really, really difficult, right? Folks have referred to decades of underbuilding in the state. That is certainly an issue. Obviously, with the financial crisis the state was under and cutting of funding for affordable housing and many other things, that's a huge ramp up that would be needed to address those concerns. The price of timber, right? The governor doesn't control that. Housing construction costs are going up. Very little the governor can do. And obviously the president. The president has made a habit of beating up on California over its housing issues, but as some of the folks in the last panel mentioned, not done a lot to help support some of the initiatives that were here, initiatives in general that would help further house folks.
And let's quickly talk. It's amazing how much it's already been referenced about Senate Bill 50, the bill from Senator Scott Wiener that tries to upzone a huge swaths of California. Explain Newsom's position on SB 50 and then kind of the road ahead.
Yeah, so he never really said that he wanted that bill, but
it was weird.
Because it's kind of an interesting situation where he's like, I like the concept, I like the negotiations, but never called out and out endorsed the bill. And I think, in the immediate aftermath of its failure, he committed himself, him and both the now leader of the state Senate, Tony Atkins from San Diego, committed to supporting a new big housing production bill this year, but very few details at this point on what that would actually look like. So I think, my take on the whole SB 50 thing and in general is if you want to make big changes to land use policy along the lines of what was being called for in that bill, you're going to need to have the governor being involved in that process and kind of taking ownership over that process. And I think now that has happened, even though SB 50 is no longer on the table.
Yes, and just to clarify, when I say it was weird, you would ask the administration, does the governor support SB 50? And you wouldn't get a direct yes or no answer. But then he would say, we are working to move it forward.
I would support conversations.
Just to clarify.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. As you mentioned, Pro Tem Atkins and Governor Newsom have pledged to do major housing production bills this year. What could they possibly do? So there's been some thought about splitting some of the elements of Senate Bill 50. Oh, all right.
Okay, it's time.
Governor Schwarzenegger. It was getting too wonky, wasn't it?
I'm trying to be very subtle to just say, I think you should wrap it up.
This is probably the best.
I'm a subtle kind of a person.
Yes. You can tap dance us off if you'd like. So.
No, but I just want to say you guys are doing a great job. You're really addressing the issues. I think it's great to talk about the pros and the cons, which every administration has. I just want to say, Kevin Dillon, you did a great job with your panel discussion. It was really good. I'm not joking. I know we are joking a lot always, but it's no joke. I still believe that every effort should be made to work with the federal government. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I've had firsthand experience, obviously, as governor, struggling with the federal government. Because remember, when we said we wanted to go and do our environmental action in California, the federal government said, no, we don't give you the waiver, and we had to take them all the way up to the Supreme Court, where we then won, because the federal government claimed that greenhouse gases are not a pollutant. And then the Supreme Court said, yes, well, duh. Can it be really that stupid not to think that this is a pollutant. But anyway, the bottom line is we never gave up. We fought and we negotiated and we fought and we negotiated because we give them money. And California only gets back 78 cents for each dollar we pay in taxes. And therefore, everyone in California should be going after the federal government to get the money, no matter who is president. And I tell you, with the after-school programs, when the Bush administration came in, they immediately proposed to cut the funds, the $1.3 billion that Clinton was responsible for getting, passed and signed it, which was 21st century money. And so there was $1.3 billion they wanted to cut in after-school programs. We didn't say anything. I went back to a hearing at Congress, and we had a great hearing, and they put it back again, the $1.3 billion. Then the Obama administration came, and they took it out. So there's nothing with Republican and Democrat. They took it out because they said, we're the federal government, and we're going to create our own program. Well, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, you cannot trust them with any program back there in Washington. So I was worried about that. So, of course, we went back again, testified again, and it again was put, but the Obama administration put it back in. So now for 16 years we had that money because we worked with the federal government. And so if this administration, the Trump administration has also taken it out, and we went back there again and campaigned and lobbied and said leave it in, and they left it in. So the bottom line that what I'm saying is never give up and never worry about who is up there. Do you hate that person? Do you like that person? It's not about that. I mean, I understand the frustration that people have with this administration, but I think that what is important is we have no choice. We must work together, because it's like a soccer team or a baseball team or a basketball team. If one player goes out of line and doesn't work with the team, you have a chance of losing. The only way you can win is if everyone works together, and everyone meaning the federal government is part of that mix. So this is just my opinion about it. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there's signals that coming that are very mixed from this administration and all that stuff. So in any case, I just want to say you have
a question.
What questions? Yeah.
You have a question.
Very quickly.
Okay, just one question. Which one wants to ask it? You or him?
Okay. Right. So what kind of help would you like to see from the federal government?
Well, I think that there was one thing that was said very eloquently today, was that in the 80s, there was the no-growth movement, and therefore laws were passed to create no growth. And so they were successful with those laws, but they didn't know it would have this kind of consequences. So therefore now you can use the same method to undo those laws that created the no-growth system in California. Create now laws that undoes that, so that we free up our builders, so we provide properties and that we can go and build. Because then you don't have to force cities and everyone to do certain things, which I think is a good idea, that you have to stipulate here's what you need to do if the cities don't really do much. But I think that you have to create a supply and demand situation. The reason why our housing price has gone out of control, and we all benefited from it, may I remind you, because when you have a house, at one point it costs $1 million, then a year later it's 1.2 million, then a year later it's 1.5 million, because there is such a shortage of housing. That's why the price goes up. And this is why now, like I said, my postal worker friend in 1968, he paid $280 for an apartment in Santa Monica, 5 blocks from the beach. 2 bedrooms, and he made $1,400 salary as a postal worker. So think about now the difference. The day this very same apartment is $3,000, and the postal worker doesn't make $3,000 every month. You know what I'm saying? So that is really the problem. It's like it's now equal to what you get on wages. So no one can afford it anymore. So we have created a crisis by the government. So we have to now ask and beg the government to undo this crisis so that we can have affordable housing and that we can go and build rather than doing all this artificial stuff that we are trying to do here. So this is just one of the things. But as you could hear, why I wanted to bring everyone together, and I want to thank all of you that are staying here so far. Thank you for staying that long, because I know it sometimes gets boring, but I find it just fascinating. I do. I mean, to me, it's just like unbelievable, because I'm not an expert in housing. I'm not an expert in homelessness. I'm not. But my heart is there. And when I go and I drive around Venice with my bicycle, and I go to Gold's Gym, and I see all of a sudden there's one tent, and then there's another tent, and a month later there's 3 more tents, and a month later there's another 3 more tents. And now Gold's Gym is surrounded by tents. I said, what the hell is going on here? Why are these politicians not solving this problem? I mean, they're talking eloquently about everything. They have great lines and great speeches and great solutions up here. But I'm just saying, I just hope and pray that they now go home and do the things that they suggested here. And wouldn't that be great? Because we can get rid of the problem. I mean, there's a short-term solutions and there's long-term solutions. You're not going to get rid of this problem in 5 years, but within the next 10 years, I think that we should lick this problem if everyone really works together. So this is exactly what I feel like. And I think you have to be very bold, and you have to kind of, go all out, which politicians naturally don't like to do. They like to address little things because it's safer. Like let's pass a anti-cow tail cutting legislation while we had a budget crisis in Sacramento. I mean, we were having a $10 billion deficit, and we were about to do the budget. They couldn't get the budget done, but they passed the Blueberry Commission law.
Did you sign
so
that?
That's the way I'm telling you, this is what I've experienced, what I experienced when I was in Sacramento. They passed a commission, a law to create a Blueberry Commission, and we were sitting on a $10 billion deficit.
Did
They
you
couldn't
sign
get the budget
the
done.
Blueberry Commission? Does it exist?
No, I wouldn't sign anything until the budget was done. Nothing was signed. So, but I mean, just I give you an insight of the way it works, so because I've been there. But now I just want to tell you, the Schwarzenegger Institute is all about solving problems. I don't care if you're a Republican. I don't care if you're a Democrat. I never looked at any party as the enemy. I always looked at the parties as partners and as ways of solving the problems. I swear to you. And Kevin Dillon, who was the speaker, and who was like the president pro tem up there, and he served at the time I was governor even, we worked together. He knows. I had Democrats come down to the tent, to the smoking tent, because I had a cigar tent at the middle of the Capitol, because there was a law that you couldn't smoke inside the Capitol. And then there was a law that you had to be 20 feet away from the Capitol wall. So I built a tent 20 feet away from the Capitol wall, and we smoked all stogies all day long and had a great time and drank Austrian schnapps. Exactly. That's what we did.
Sounds great.
Fun, right?
Anyway,
Great time. Yeah.
So anyway, I just want to thank you all for being here. We will have many more symposiums, and you all will get invited, okay? So you want to ask a question? Oh, let's go.
Sure, yeah.
But I mean, we got to get out of here now. These poor people need to go to work.
I agree. So how do you think Newsom is handling engaging with the Trump administration?
Well, I think that, as I said, it is important to continue engaging with the Trump administration and with the federal government. And what Newsom does, there's a rule that we have, that we never really comment on the next governor. So I, as a governor that have served, I never got any criticism from Gray Davis or from Pete Wilson or from those guys. I'm not going to go and criticize a Jerry Brown or Newsom or anybody else. I'm not going to say anything negative. He has just come into office. He's now a year governor. I wish him good luck, and I told him also that anytime he needs my help, I'm there for him.
Has he
So
reached out to you?
To me, yes. We have done some things together. And, and so I wish him all the best of luck. And, it's our California. We got to support whoever is the leader there. And, I will be supportive of him, whatever he does. And it's never going to be perfect. Look, I think different than he does. You think different than he does. We all think different, So I just hope that he has the big vision and that he goes and takes care of this problem, because I think he has a good opportunity to really lick this problem of homelessness once and for all. And there's many other kind of issues in California, even though it's, like I said, the greatest state. Anyway, let's give them a big hand here, otherwise they will not stop. Thank you very much. You guys did great.
And before everyone leaves, since there's less people in the room, everybody's got to clap louder to make up for that in support of Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger for putting this together.
Thank you very much. Thank you.